Hi, Lou Pulsifer here to talk fairly briefly about what a game convention or game conference can do for a game designer. In other words, why should game designers go to cons? I'm mixing here video game conferences and tabletop conventions. A brief difference: conferences focus on how to make better games. Conventions focus on playing games, but they both have aspects of the other. So I have 5 possibilities here. The first is to meet publishers or funders. A lot of the world is online or virtual, and I've known of people who worked together for years and never met each other. They just worked through online and the phone. Nonetheless, I'm convinced that talking with people face to face makes for a much stronger connection, especially if you're a designer without a track record. You automatically differentiate yourself from all the other designers without track records when you come to the con and actually speak with the relevant people. So, go and meet publishers at cons, talk with them, volunteer to work at their booths, and so forth, and you'll have a better chance than the people who don't. Another reason to go to a con is to learn new techniques. Video game conferences are all about talks to help you make better games. At the East Coast Game Conference 2014, there was many talks about putting stories into games and about game pitches, and many other topics. At tabletop conventions, you can see all the new games being played, you can play them, you can watch them being played, you can talk to people who played them. And the big conventions have many seminars about making and selling games. I give seminars at PresCon, WBC, Gen Con, and sometimes the East Coast Game Conference. Another reason is stimulation of ideas. When I go home from a tabletop convention or the East Coast Game Conference, I'm full of game ideas. In the case of the game conference, it's mostly for videos for my classes and for things that would go into books. I drive to these conferences up to 650 miles one way to Gen Con, so I have lots of time to think on the way back and record my thoughts on my PDA, which is easy to manipulate one hand, so it's not unsafe. Of course, you have to follow up once you get home. Another reason is to find collaborators. Now, I don't personally look for collaborators, but some people work better with another person, and if you're in video games, a lot of people may be needed to make a video game, not just designers, but programmers, artists, sound people, and so on. If you're looking for non-local collaborators, where better to look than at a con? If you're there and you hear someone talking about things that interest you, introduce yourself, talk with them. Maybe you'll hit it off. Maybe you can end up collaborating in some way. Another reason is to find playtesters. Now that can be more problematic because the people who go to game conventions to play games generally want to play the new games that have been published, not prototypes. Nonetheless, there are places set aside for playtesting. It's quite organized now at some of the bigger tabletop game conventions. And so you might find people to playtest your games. Keep an open mind. Everything at a convention should be stimulating for a game designer.